Faro is the historic capital of Portugal's Algarve region, but for many travelers, it is also one of the most overlooked stops in southern Portugal. Most people either land at Faro Portugal airport and leave, or rush straight toward the beaches, so I wanted to see what you can really experience with one day in Faro Portugal after visiting Benagil cave in the morning. In this Faro Portugal travel guide, I will show you my Faro walking tour route, real costs, food experience, transport options, essential Faro travel tips, and whether Faro is actually worth your time or just a convenient Algarve stop. On the fifth and final day of our Portugal trip, we started the morning at Benagil beach and joined a Benagil cave boat tour before driving toward Faro. After around 50 minutes on the road, we arrived in Faro at about 12 noon. Since we had rented a car for this Portugal Algarve trip, parking was the first practical detail we had to solve. We found a parking area right near Faro Marina and paid around €5 for approximately 3 to 4 hours, which felt reasonable for such a central location. If you are coming by car, this is one of my first Faro travel tips. Parking near the marina makes the visit easier because you can walk to the city center, the old town, the marina area, and many of the main things to do in Faro without moving the car again. The first landmark we saw in the center was Monumento a Ferreira de Almeida, which has historical importance for the city. At first glance, Faro City looked clean, organized and relaxed, but honestly, my first reaction was not wow. Faro felt calm and practical rather than instantly dramatic, which is important to know if you are expecting something like Lisbon, Porto or the most famous beach towns of the Algarve. I also noticed many bicycles and motorcycles, which made the city feel easy to move around. What surprised me was that we felt more traffic than people, and my guess is that because it was the middle of a hot summer day, many people were probably at the beach instead of walking around the center. After parking, we started walking along Rua da Marinha toward the central streets of the city. The streets were covered with classic Portuguese pavement mosaics, and on both sides there were souvenir shops, cafes and small stores. Because of the summer heat, some streets had fabric shades hanging above them, which made the walk more comfortable and gave the streets a nice visual character. When we reached Rua de Santo Antonio, the quality of the shops felt higher, and even though it was not very crowded, it was clearly one of the livelier shopping streets in the city. If you are planning Faro travel or a simple Faro walking tour, this area is a good place to begin before entering the more historic part of Faro Algarve. After the Benagil adventure in the morning, the drive to Faro, and walking through the streets under the summer heat, we were really hungry. Some restaurants were closed, so we started looking for a good place to have lunch, which is one small planning detail I would keep in mind if you visit during quieter hours. In the end, we found a small and charming restaurant called Ado Pinto, which served local Portuguese dishes including cataplana and beef stew style meals. We paid around €20 per person for a nice lunch, which felt like a fair mid-range price for a proper meal in the center. If you are visiting on a smaller budget, you can still find a simple lunch for around €10, but for a more comfortable restaurant meal, I would expect 15 to €20 per person. After lunch, Faro started to feel more interesting as we continued exploring different parts of the city. On the way, we passed through a street with some buildings that looked almost abandoned, which gave us the feeling that we were approaching the historic side of the city. A little further ahead, while passing near a cafe, we suddenly saw Palacete Belmarzo, one of Faro's most elegant and eye-catching buildings. Right across from it, the Brazilian consulate building also stood out with its historical character and strong corner presence. As we continued from the road on the right, the walls of Faro Old Town Portugal started to appear, and the city began to shift from a calm modern center into a more atmospheric old town experience. Before entering the old town, we saw a small park with beautiful azulejo tile panels showing a piece of the city's history. Next to the old town, there was also a large parking area surrounded by trees and green space, which is useful if you are arriving by car. Around this area, there were many houses of different sizes, colors, and architectural details, giving the city a richer local look. Then we entered Faro Old City through Arco do Repuso, passing between a few tourists rather than a huge crowd. The moment we walked through the gate, we found ourselves on a street with typical Portuguese architecture, a restaurant, and warm yellow tones that made the old town feel much more charming. Faro's old town is not huge, but that is exactly what makes it easy to enjoy in just a few hours. After entering the old town, we arrived at Praça de Afonso III, where the monument of Dom Afonso III stands. This square is also home to Museu Municipal de Faro, one of the important museums in the city. A little further from the square, we saw restaurants on both sides, which made this part of the old town feel like a nice place to slow down. For anyone looking for things to do in Faro, Portugal, this area is one of the key historic stops because it combines a quiet square, local architecture, museums, and traditional old town atmosphere. It does not overwhelm you with massive landmarks, but it slowly reveals its charm through gates, quiet squares, tiles, restaurants, and small architectural details. As we continued walking through the old town streets, we noticed street art on some of the walls, adding a creative contrast to the historical surroundings. A little further ahead, the Catedral de Faro appeared with an architectural style that felt very connected to the character of the city. Right across from the cathedral was Paço Episcopal de Faro, another impressive building that made this area feel like one of the most important parts of the old town. This is definitely one of the main things to do in Faro if you enjoy architecture, history, and slow city walks. Faro Algarve Portugal may be famous as a gateway to beaches, islands, and boat trips, but inside the old town, you can still feel the cultural side of the Algarve. Our final major stop inside the old town was Câmara Municipal de Faro, one of the most important buildings in the city. After walking a little more through the historic streets, we exited toward the city center through the historic Porta Árabe. As soon as we came out, Igreja da Misericordia stood directly in front of us, one of the important Catholic churches in Faro. When we turned back, we saw the outer side of the gate, Arco da Vila, which is one of the symbolic landmarks of the city. This part of the Faro walking tour was one of my favorite sections, because in just a few minutes, you move from old walls and historic gates to churches, squares, and the more open city center. After leaving the old town, we took a short walk through Jardim Manuel Bivar, the central park of the city. At the end of the park, on our right side, the Caixa Geral de Depósitos building caught our attention because of its unusual funnel-shaped architecture rising upward. Then we continued along Rua Conselheiro Bivar, another lively street with cafes, restaurants, narrow side streets, and arched passages. This area showed that Faro also has a strong food and cafe culture, even if it does not feel as intense or tourist-packed as Lisbon, Porto, or some coastal resort towns in the Algarve. If you are filming a Faro Portugal vlog or planning a simple Faro travel route, combining Jardim Manuel Bivar, Rua Conselheiro Bivar, Faro Marina, and the old town gives you a very easy half-day itinerary. After exploring the central streets, we spent a short time in a souvenir shop on one of the main roads where cars could enter the city. For travelers who want to stay in the area, AP Eva Senses Hotel, located in front of the Marina, gave the impression of being one of the more elegant and centrally located hotels in Faro. Around the Marina, there were also small tour office stands where you could book different regional tours, including Benagil cave tours and other Algarve experiences. Faro Marina is not huge, but it is a practical and pleasant area for walking, finding tours, checking the waterfront, and starting or ending your city route. After one final walk along the Marina, we returned to our car and completed our Faro visit, which lasted almost 4 hours. For us, that was enough to understand the city center, but if you want dinner, sunset, or Faro nightlife, staying longer or overnight would make more sense. For our trip, we were 3 people and we rented a car for 60 euros per day. During the day, we used around 80 euros of fuel, so our transportation cost was roughly 45 euros per person. This gave us flexibility because we visited Benagil Beach, Benagil Cave and Faro in the same day, but it was not the cheapest option. If you are traveling from Lisbon to Faro and back, Flixbus can cost around 20 euros, which is much more budget friendly, but you will have less flexibility. Another option is to join a 12 hours tour from Lisbon that includes Faro and Benagil Cave, and those usually cost around 90 to 120 euros per person. If you are already in Faro and want to visit Benagil Cave from there, tours can cost around 50 to 60 euros. So for Portugal Faro travel, your best transport option depends on whether you want flexibility, comfort, or the lowest possible price. For our real costs in Faro, parking near the Marina was around 5 euros for 3 to 4 hours, and our lunch at Adu Pinto was around 20 euros per person. A budget lunch in Faro can be around 10 euros, while a mid-range lunch is usually around 15 to 20 euros. Espresso can cost around 60 to 80 cents, while more specialized coffees are usually around 2 euros. If you want to stay overnight, accommodation in Faro can range from around 20 to 80 euros per night for budget stays, while luxury hotels can go up to 250 to 450 euro or more per night. Mid-range accommodation in Faro town center usually costs around 80 to 180 euros per night, which gives a good balance of comfort, central location, and useful amenities without paying luxury prices. For a very low budget day, you could take Flixbus from Lisbon, eat a simple lunch, walk everywhere, and keep the cost much lower than a car-based Algarve itinerary. What I liked about Faro was that it felt clean, organized, easy to walk, and much calmer than many other popular Portugal travel destinations. The old town was beautiful, the Marina area was practical, and the city had enough history, architecture, cafes, restaurants and small streets to make a half-day visit enjoyable. But I also want to be honest. Faro did not feel like the most exciting city in Portugal, and if you only have a few days in the country, Lisbon, Porto, Sintra, Cascais, or the dramatic beaches of the Algarve may feel more memorable. Visiting at noon in summer was also not ideal because the heat made the walk more tiring, some restaurants were closed and some streets felt quieter than expected. If I visited again, I would probably come earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon and maybe combine it with a relaxed dinner or explore Faro nightlife if I stayed overnight. My honest advice is this: do not expect Faro to impress you instantly, but give it a few hours and explore the old town properly. So, is Faro worth visiting? I would say yes, but with the right expectations. Faro is not a city that needs 2 or 3 full days for most first-time visitors, but it works very well as a half-day or one-day stop in the Algarve. I visited Faro after Benagil Cave, and for me, that was a good combination because the morning gave us nature, sea caves, beaches, and boat tour scenery, while the afternoon gave us history, city streets, food, and local culture. If you are flying through Faro Portugal airport, staying in the Algarve, or planning a wider Portugal-Algarve road trip, Faro is definitely worth adding to your route. But if you are coming all the way from Lisbon only for Faro, I would personally combine it with Benagil Cave, beaches, or another Algarve stop to make the long journey more rewarding. For me, Faro works best as part of a smarter Algarve plan, not as the only highlight of the trip. That was my honest one day in Faro Portugal experience, including Faro Old City, Faro Marina, the Old Town walking route, food, transport, travel costs, and my personal thoughts after visiting. If you are planning a trip to Portugal, make sure to watch my other Portugal travel videos from Lisbon, Porto, Sintra, Cascais, Benagil Cave, and the Algarve. If this video helped you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone planning a Portugal trip, and let me know in the comments whether you would add Faro to your itinerary.